And we have to start with this frightening news. Several Democrat Connecticut lawmakers say they were targeted with bomb threats yesterday. This, of course, coming just a day after several of President-elect Trump's picks were also targeted with bomb and swatting threats. Trump's nominee for U.S. ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, joins me now. Governor, thank you for being here. Happy Thanksgiving. Have you received any threats?
Just from my wife, but that's an everyday thing. So other than that, I have not. And, you know, this is such a terrible thing that's happening, all these threats going. Now it's a bipartisan deal, Democrats, Republicans getting it. And it's just, it's an unfortunate part of living in our current world where people have lost their minds.
Next one, Governor. Israel says Hezbollah already has violated the ceasefire. The IDF launching an airstrike in Lebanon's third largest city. Governor, once you and I have talked about this before, but this so-called peace deal that Biden has worked out uses the Lebanese army, which is like this with Hezbollah, to be the dividing line, the so-called neutral dividing line between Hezbollah and Israel. What do you make of this whole ceasefire deal?
Well, you know, David, the other day when we had this conversation, I said it's like asking a 400-pound man to guard the dessert buffet. It probably does not end well. And I really predicted that Hezbollah would not honor the agreement. They never do. None of these Iranian-backed proxies are interested in real peace. That's not what they're about. They're about destroying Israel and killing every last Jew on earth and then coming after us in America. So we have to just understand who we're dealing with. As the old saying goes, we're not dealing with honest brokers. We're dealing with people who want to murder those who don't bow to their radical ideology. So any idea that we're going to have peace, it only will come when they're eradicated, when they're put down. That's why I think that the Prime Minister of Israel accepted the agreement, but it had a very clear clause in there that if it were violated, all bets are off, and right. Israel goes right back to trying to keep them under control, and that's what they're going to have to do.
Well, they're also, the Mideast in general is going to have to get used to a new sheriff in town with Donald Trump, and of course you'd be his representative right smack in the middle in Israel there. The Abraham Accords, a proud achievement of the first Trump term, may be expanded in the second Trump term. Of course, a lot of Democrats said it could never be done to have an Arab-Israeli deal without Hamas or the PA in the middle there. It was done in the first term. Could it be expanded to Saudi Arabia in a second term?
Well, Donald Trump did a remarkable and historic thing in bringing about the Abraham Accords. There were many people a part of it, former Ambassador David Friedman among them, some great people that helped put that together. But it was Donald Trump's, let's use the word chutzpah, who just decided that he's not going to do things the old-fashioned way. And it's what I love about the guy. He's a pragmatist. He goes after what will work rather than what people have been failing at for decades. So I do think that it will be expanded. Everybody's better off when there's an agreement and a compact among these nations. They do better in trade, tourism, travel. Everyone is more peaceful. But you're never going to get some of these people to the table because that's not what they're interested in. Yeah. When they do get money, they don't spend it to build an economy. They could have had an incredible resort area in Gaza. But Hamas came in and took every last penny and built underground tunnels and rocket launchers so they could kill people. So we're not dealing with people who are rational or sane. And that's why you've got to get the rational people in the Middle East. And there are nations that they don't want constant state of war. They'd like prosperity for all their people.
Governor,
I hope that's what we see.
I have to ask a quick final one. We have the Holy Lands divided this year. We have Bethlehem divided by Israel with a big wall. Is there any possibility that after a year or 2 years now of fighting in the Middle East, the Palestinians might get so disaffected by Hamas and Hezbollah and the other people who have been controlling their lives that they work closer with Israel? And could you be a part of making that happen?
Well, I've got to get confirmed, and that's a process. So I don't want to speak for the administration coming in or anyone else. But let me just say, I think anything is possible because Donald Trump is the ultimate deal maker, and that's one of the reasons that I'm so very proud to be able to serve him in this capacity because I see breakthroughs happening. They won't be easy. but it could be a true game changer in the Middle East when he comes back to the table.
Well, peace in the Middle East is a wonderful goal for 2025. Let's pray that it happens. Governor, thank you so much. Wonderful to see you again, Mike. Have a wonderful Christmas if I don't talk to you till then. Appreciate it.
Thank you, David.
And to your family.